Welcome back to this week. This is class number 57. Today we have Ron who's going to request for Dharma. So Ron, if are you ready?
Yes, I am ready, for sure.
Okay, I'm going to advance the slide and you can begin at your own time.
Okay. 恭敬大德三听，为师保卫其戒众生，经传了法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死离苦得乐。速真无声。Will the Sangha with great virtue out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo Sadanto Suchetoye Alahati Sanmiao Sanputo Che. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you are, and welcome back. Let's begin by chanting Medicine Master Buddha's name 7 times. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life. Medicine Master Buddha, 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 Medicine Master does come one. 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 Today we are going to continue with our investigation of the Payasi Sutta, the very stubborn man called Payasi. But at the same time, he also has very real questions about what happens to us when we die, and he, as we have seen, he really tries to find out, right? So why are we doing this? Okay, just a quick summary. We have read this multiple times before, not just in the last few weeks, but in the earlier classes. Bodhidharma says, it says, mortals who don't understand true practice and blindly perform good deeds are born in the three higher states of existence within the three realms. And he says, what are these three states? He says, if you do the 10 good deeds, all right, you do the 10 good deeds and you're full, like, okay, so this is actually normal people. We do good deeds. We believe in that we are rewarded and we want blessings. He says, you are born as gods in the realm of desire. And then people who blindly observe the five precepts, when he says blindly, what he means is that we fall, for example, we take the five precepts, but we don't really understand what, how to use the five precepts well. It's just like, you know how to drive a car, but it doesn't mean that you can drive a car very skillfully where your passengers don't get upset or sick, or you drive it in a very safe manner when it's raining, or on different road conditions. That's what he means by blindly, just doing without not fully understanding. So it says people who observe the five precepts and foolishly indulge in love and hate, which is us. People, most humans, or I would say 99.999%, our minds are filled with desire and at the same time um, aversion, like hatred, animosity. And so he says people like this are born as humans in the realm of anger. And then the third one is people who cling to the phenomenal world, believe in false doctrines, and pray for blessings are born as demons in the realm of delusion. It says these are the three higher states of existence. So in order to understand what he means when he says blindly perform or observe the 10 good deeds or the five precepts, first we have to understand what is wrong view. Because from wrong view, the Buddha says everything else you do is wrong. Even if you hold the precepts, it's not going to lead you to liberation. So there's two components, um, which is uh, right view, and the second component is right intention. So after you understand the how to hold the precepts well, not just maintaining the precepts, but how to hold it in order to achieve your goals. For example, a rebirth in a pure land, or to end birth and death, as opposed to just being reborn in the realm of humans, then that's where right intention comes in. How do you hold it with the right mind so that you don't fall into what Bodhidharma is warning us about? So the five main wrong views is believing that there is believing our body to be us. That's it falls under the same thing about there is a soul. So mistaking the body and the mind to be us, mistaking us to be in our body or in our mind, thinking that there's uh, a soul kind of thing. So that's number one. And then number two is thinking is either permanence or annihilation. Permanence is thinking that we live forever, that everything is eternal, we never die. And the opposite is that upon death is just black, is emptiness. Our suffering ends and nothing happens after that. That's what they think. And then number three, false views is not believing in cause and effect. So what happens when you don't believe in cause and effect is that you do not know how to be responsible for yourself. You do not know how to do the right things in order to get what you want. So this is like someone who plants, they don't like bitter gourd, and then they keep on planting bitter gourd, not understanding that the seeds that they're planting are bitter gourd seeds. And then when they get bitter gourd, they complain and they look at their neighbors who have apples and eggplants, and they say, I like to eat those things. How come I don't have those things? And as they're complaining, they're still planting bitter gourd seeds. Why? Because out of ignorance. They don't know how to. They don't know that planting a bitter gourd seed will get you bitter gourd. They think that all there's nothing to do with what you get. So that's a false view. Rigid attachment to views, meaning you're very stubborn. Mainly, you are stubborn to what? Number 1, 2, and 3. What you think is right, and your mind is very close. I guess you don't have an open mind. When you learn wisdom, for example, the sutras, instead of having a mind that asks questions such as, how can this be useful to me, which is useful doubt, they have skeptical doubt, meaning, how do I know this is right? I think this is wrong, and then they ignore it. And then number 5 is rigid attachment to the efficacy of rites and rituals. This is prevalent everywhere. Sacrifices are part of this, thinking that if you sacrifice something, um, you will get something good in return, or just thinking that if you join a ceremony, um, a ritual, then just joining the ceremony and the ritual, singing well, putting your palms together is enough that you have eradicated your bad karma, uh, without understanding that all these are just expedient aids to help a person transform their bad habits. So if you don't transform your bad habits, and you think just by participating in a ceremony, you have done good, you're not wrong. There are some wholesome seeds being planted, but it's not the wholesome seeds that lead to an ending of suffering. Okay, that's a very important distinction there. Okay, let's go back. Go to the sutta where we ended last week. So we are just going to continue. So now Payasi is giving further reasoning why he thinks that there is no soul, there's no afterlife. Okay, so this is Payasi speaking right now. He says, suppose they were to arrest a bandit, a criminal, and present him to me saying, sir, this is a bandit, a criminal, and he gets punished. So he says, this is the punishment he thinks of. He says, cut open this man's outer skin, and then maybe we can see his soul. But he says, no, when they cut open his skin, he says he doesn't see any soul. Then he says, okay, then cut open his inner skin, his flesh, his sinews, his bones or marrow. Hopefully we see his soul. And then they do so, but we see no soul. And this is how he proved that there's no afterlife. So he thinks the soul can be seen. First of all, he thinks that there's a soul. All right. He thinks that there's some spirit, there's some breath, there's some ether or something that's in the body, and that this is the thing that goes to rebirth. So he already makes that assumption, and then now he's trying to prove his assumption right. And he says, no, he doesn't see anything. So this is how I prove there's no afterlife. All right. So poor Venerable Mahamaggalana says again, he says, okay, well then, chieftain, I shall give you a simile. And he says, for by means of a simile, some sensible people understand the meaning of what they say. So through a metaphor, people who are smart, whose minds are aligned to learning and understanding more about themselves, through a metaphor, they can extract out the principle and try to understand what's being said. So that's what Venerable Mahamaggalana is saying. So now if you look at the slide, I've added in, to make it easier to follow, I've added in the title of the simile, which is the fire worshipping method hair ascetic. All right, so what is this? So Venerable Mahamaggalana says once upon a time, he's telling a story. It says a certain fire worshipping method hair ascetic settled in a leaf hut in the wilderness region. And a caravan came out from a certain country. They stayed for one night not far from the ascetic's hermitage and then moved on. The ascetic thought, why don't I go to that caravan's campsite? Hopefully I'll find something there. So he wants to see if they left something behind that he can use. So he went and he saw a little baby boy abandoned there. When he saw this, he thought, it's not proper for me to look on while a human being dies. Why don't I bring this boy back to my hermitage? nurse him, nourish him, and raise him. So that's what he did. So although he's an ascetic, he has abandoned the world. He has not abandoned his human sensibilities. So it says when the boy was about 10 or 12 years old, the ascetic had some business come up in the country. So he said to the boy, he said, "My dear, I wish to go to the country. Serve the sacred flame. Do not extinguish it. But if you should extinguish it, here is the hatchet, the firewood, and the bundle of drill sticks. Light the fire and serve it." And having instructed the boy, the ascetic went to the country. So fire worshipping here, if you go back to the title, this ascetic is someone who worships fire. So for them, fire is very important. I don't know what the significance is, but during the Buddha's time, there were already people whose religion was worshipping fire. And one of the things that they did was to never let the fire go out. You always keep the fire burning, maybe as a sign of sincerity. I remember when my grandmother died, uh, at that time, uh, my family didn't understand enough, and we were doing Taoist rites. And one of the things that you do in the Taoist rite is you burn uh, paper that has that gold seal stamp on it. I think that's something like um, hell paper, hell banknotes, the more traditional style kind. And I was told as a child, it says, don't let the fire go out, continue burning, although no one could really understand the principle behind it. So, okay, going back to the sutta. But the boy was so engrossed in his play that the fire went out. Okay, so the boy didn't do what he was asked. Well, he's a young boy. And then he thought, my father told me to serve the sacred flame. Why don't I light it again and serve it? So he chopped a bundle of drill sticks. I guess drill sticks here means the sticks that you use to start a fire, you drill. So he used a hatchet or axe. He chopped a bundle of sticks, thinking, hopefully I'll get a fire. But he still got no fire. So this boy obviously does not know how to build a fire. He knows it involves sticks. He involves an axe to chop the sticks into smaller pieces. And he thinks that's it. And then he waited and he realized there's no fire coming out. I guess you can take this as a metaphor for how some people hold the precepts too. They have the precepts, they hold the precepts, but they don't really think about how they're holding the precepts or the intention in holding the precepts. And Ron has a question for today about volition, which is volition is actually intention. And we'll come to that question um, at the end of today's class. We should have enough time, although there's a long way to go in this sutta. So the boy, then he split the bundle of drill sticks into 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, or 100 parts. He chopped them into splinters. He pounded them into a mortar and swept them away in a strong wind, thinking, hopefully I'll get a fire, but he still got no fire. So this young boy is he's not lazy at all. And he's trying a lot of different approaches. And still, because he's not doing it the right way, although he's putting in a lot of effort, he's not getting any results, you know, uh, until he's pounding them in the mortar, meaning, you're maybe getting something like powdered incense kind of thing, sawdust. Then the method hair ascetic, having concluded his business, he came back to his hermitage and he said, I trust, my dear, that the fire didn't go out. And the boy told him what happened. Then the ascetic thought, how foolish is this boy? How incompetent. For how can he seek a fire so irrationally? He can't figure out why this boy is so clueless. So while the boy looked on, he took a bundle of fire sticks, the ascetic, he lit the fire and said, dear boy, this is how to light a fire. Not the foolish and incompetent way you sought it so irrationally. So without understanding how cause and effect works, the boy put all the ingredients of a fire together and hope for a fire, but never got the result he wanted. Okay, and like I said again, this is a metaphor for a lot of people's practice. We do without quite understanding uh, what is it that we are doing or how we should do it. So now Venerable Mahamgliana, having finished this simile, he says, in the same way, chieftain, being foolish and incompetent, you seek the other world irrationally. Let go of this harmful misconception, chieftain. Let go of it. Don't create lasting harm and suffering for yourself, because if you have foolish thoughts, the only one that you harm is in the end yourself, no one else. Again, he is very, very stubborn, Payasi. And now he tells why he's so stubborn. He says, even though Master Kashyapa, oh, sorry, it's not Mahamagliana. I made a mistake. It's Venerable Mahakashyapa. Says, even though Master Kashyapa says this, still I'm not able to let go of that harmful misconception. And why? He says, King Pasenadi of Kosala knows my views, and so do foreign kings. If I let go of this harmful misconception, people will say, how foolish is the chieftain Payasi, how incompetent that he should hold on to a mistake. I shall carry on this view out of anger, contempt, and spite. Okay. So that's his reason for not wanting to change his mind, although he knows that Venerable Kasyapa is definitely making a lot of sense. So again, Venerable Kasyapa says, I shall give you another simile, and this is the simile of the two caravan leaders. All right. So it says, once upon a time, a large caravan of 1,000 wagons traveled from a country in the east to the west. So this is not actually a simile. In the Jataka tales, the Buddha actually shared this before as one. He said this actually happened in one of his past lives, and I'm not sure if Shufu. I think Shufu might have shared this story as well. I'm not sure. But okay, let's continue reading. He says, so this large caravan of 1,000 wagons traveled, and wherever they went, they quickly used up the grass, the wood, the water, the green foliage, because 1,000 wagons means there's more than 1,000 people, and they all need to cook and eat and feed the horses or the oxen that pull the carriages. So they had two leaders, okay, each in charge of 500 wagons, and they thought this is a large caravan of 1,000 wagons. So instead of going all together at once, he says, and using up all the resources that we find, he says, why don't we split the caravan into two halves? And that's what they did. So by splitting, they can go at different times and have less impact. You could say they're environmentally conscious. So they want to have less impact during the travels. So the first caravan leader who went first, says, having prepared much grass, wood, and water, started the caravan. After 2 or 3 days on the road, he saw a dark man with red eyes coming the other way in a donkey cart with muddy wheels. Okay, he was armored with a quiver and wreathed with yellow lotus, his clothes and hair all wet. So the wheels, he saw someone, a stranger with red eyes, scary, clothes and hair wet, wheels were muddy, meaning that he came from a place with water, and having a yellow lotus means that he probably picked it nearby. So seeing this person, the first caravan leader, he said, so where do you come from? And the reply was from such and such a country. And then where are you going? He gives the name of a different place. And then he asked the question he wants to know. He said, has there been much rain in the desert up ahead? And this man with the red eyes replies, says, indeed there has. He says the paths are sprinkled with water and there's a lot of grass, wood, and water. So he says, toss out your grass, your wood, and your water, and then your wagons will move swiftly when lightly laden. So don't tire your drought teams, meaning the animals. So the caravan leader, trusting this man with the red eyes, he told his whole entourage, to all the drivers, says, this man says that there has been much rain in the desert up ahead. It advises us to toss out the grass, wood, and water. The wagons will move swiftly and won't tire out our drought teams either. I'm not sure if it's horses or oxen or something else. So he said, let's toss out everything that not everything, the things that they are provisions that they need to survive, the grass, wood, and water, and let's travel. And that's what they did. Everyone agreed. And then, so as they traveled, they saw no grass, no wood, no water. And then when it was time to set up camp for the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh time, after, which means they have done a lot of traveling, they still didn't come across any grass, any wood, or any water, as which was not what the man with the red eyes obviously said. So they all fell to ruin and disaster. It says, and the man and beast in that caravan were all devoured by that non-human spirit. Only their bones remain. So the man with the red eyes, that spirit, it wasn't human. He led them into a trap. And when they were close to death, he came back and ate them all, leaving only their bones. So now it was time for the second caravan to undertake their journey. So again, they also had made sure they had enough grass, wood, and water for their journey. And again, he came across the same man, the dark-skinned man with the red eyes. Okay, and again, this man, his clothes and hair were wet. His the wheels on his donkey cart was muddy, and he had probably a very fresh yellow lotus. And then again, he asked, just like the first caravan leader, and he got the same answer and the same advice, meaning don't carry your grass, your wood, and your water, because the path ahead of you is full of that. Don't carry it now. So, but this is what the second leader said. He said, the second leader addressed his drivers. This man says that there's much rain. You know, he advises us to throw away our provisions. But he says, this is the difference. He says, but this person is neither our friend nor our relative. How can we proceed out of trust in him? So he says, we shouldn't toss out any grass, wood, or water, but continue with our goods laden as before. We shall not toss out any old stock. So everyone agreed. Okay. So it was time to camp. And in the, I guess they are, how you say, maybe regular areas that they camp at. This is not the first time they've taken the journey. So just like the first caravan, they came to the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and seventh places where they usually camp at. And this second caravan obviously didn't find any fresh grass, wood, or water at all. And then at the last camp, they saw that, oh, okay, so this is what happened. All the first caravan, all the people had perished, being eaten by that non-human spirit. So this second caravan leader addressed his driver saying, this caravan came to ruin, as happens when guided by a foolish caravan leader. Well then, sirs, toss out any of our merchandise that's of little value and take what's valuable from this caravan. So now, because there's no one left from the first caravan and they were still carrying goods for trade, so this second caravan could throw out their less valuable things and take on the more valuable items from the second caravan. So they after this, they crossed the desert safely. And then now Venerable Kashyapa tells the chieftain Payasi, he says, in the same way, chieftain, being foolish and incompetent, you will come to ruin seeking the other world irrationally like the first caravan leader. And those who think you're worth listening to and trusting will also come to ruin, just like the drivers. Let go of this harmful misconception, chieftain. Let go of it. Don't create lasting harm and suffering for yourself and also for people who in your village who think you're smart enough and they follow you. So now Venerable Mahakashyapa appeals to another aspect of logic, of sensibility in Payasi. Again, Payasi, no surprise here, is very stubborn. He says no. So instead of asking for more rationale, because he knows now Payasi is, how you say, not just stubborn, but but he has openly declared that he's stubborn about himself being stubborn. So straight away he gives another simile, Venerable Mahakashyapa, and this is a simile of the dung carrier. It says, once upon a time, a certain swineherd went from his own village to another village. There he saw a large pile of dry dung abandoned. He thought, this pile of dry dung can serve as food for my pigs. Why don't I carry it off? So he spread out his upper robe, shoveled the dry dung onto it, tied it up in a bundle, lifted it on his head, and went on his way. While on his way, a large sudden storm poured down. Smeared with leaking, oozing dung down to his fingernails, he kept on carrying the load of dung. Poor guy. Okay. When people saw him, they said, have you gone mad? Have you lost your mind? For how can you, smeared with leaking, oozing dung down to your fingernails, keep on carrying that load of dung? And then his reply was, you're the mad ones, he says. You're the ones who lost your minds. For this will serve as food for my pigs. And then Venerable Kashyapa says, for in the same way, chieftain, you seem like the dung carrier in the simile. Let go of this harmful misconception. Chieftain, let go of it. Don't create lasting harm and suffering for yourself. So meaning what you first thought might be a good idea, if the conditions change, or I think dung, when it gets wet, is not suitable to be fed to pigs anymore, I guess. So it's telling him to change his mind. And again, Payasi is still really, really stubborn. So Venerable Kashyapa gives a different simile now, the simile of the gamblers. It says, once upon a time, two gamblers were playing with dice. One gambler, every time he made a bad throw, swallowed the dice. The second gambler saw this and said, well then, my friend, you won it all. Give me the dice, I will offer them as sacrifice. And the gambler agreed and gave it to the second gambler. This is a very short simile, so I guess I'm in trying to figure out what's going on. The first gambler, whenever he makes a bad throw, instead of maybe showing everyone the result of the dice and admitting that he lost, avoids losing by swallowing the dice, so no one can see what happened. Something like that, I think. That's the principle that's going on. So he doesn't have to lose the money he's betting. So the other gambler, seeing what's going on, seeing this person trying to escape and not wanting to lose, then takes the dice and soaks the dice in poison. And then he says, come, my friend, let's play dice again. And again, they gamble. And same thing happens every time the first gambler throws a bad throw and he loses, he swallows the dice. So the second gambler now tells him, he says, the man swallows the dice without realizing they are smeared with burning poison. Swallow, you bloody cheat, swallow. Soon you know the bitter fruit. So he takes revenge against the first gambler's cheating, although, we shouldn't harm other living beings. Okay, so then remember Kashyapa says, in the same way, chieftain, you seem like the gambler in the simile, meaning you are doing something that only brings harm to yourself. So let go. Okay. Again, Payasi is very, very stubborn. So now, remember Kashyapa gives a different simile, the man who carried ham. Says, there's a time when inhabitants of a certain country immigrated, they moved, and then one friend says to another, he says, come, my friend, let's go to that country. Hopefully we'll get some riches there. So maybe a village or a country was abandoned. People move away, and these two people want to go and see what they can salvage from the place. So they went there to a certain place and they saw a pile of abandoned sun ham. Seeing it, one friend said to the other, this is a pile of abandoned, I'll just say ham. Well then, my friend, you make up a bundle of ham and I'll make one too. Let's both take a bundle of ham and go on. Okay, what's ham? Ham is the raw material that you use. You can make rope out of ham. You can, and if you process it further, you can transform ham into cloth. and then make clothes or make bags. So carrying their bundles of ham, they went to another place in the village. There they saw much ham thread abandoned. Seeing it, one friend said to the other, "This pile of abandoned ham thread is just what we wanted the ham for." "Well then, my friend, let's abandon our bundles of ham and both take a bundle of ham thread and go on." So from here, we can see that their intention in, or their interest in the ham is so that they can turn it into thread. And after carrying the raw ham for so long, they finally found the thread, which is what they wanted. But this second guy says, "I've already carried this bundle of ham a long way and it's well tied up. It's good enough for me, you understand?" So he refuses. Why? Because he's put so much effort in carrying his bundle of raw ham already. I guess this is maybe someone who's invested maybe a lot of money or a lot of time and effort into a business or a relationship, and they cannot let go. Instead of understanding that the more they do it, the more suffering, affliction, or the more loss they will get. They say that, "Oh, I've already put in so much. How can I abandon it now?" So they are tied to the past instead of being able to look at the present and uh, uh, understand what the future would bring. So the second person would rather, because he's put so much effort in carrying his ham, just continue carrying the ham and maybe turn it into thread later. So they went to another place in the village, and there they saw cloth that was made from raw ham that was turned into thread and then finally made into cloth. So the first person, when he saw it, he says, "Oh, this cloth is just what we wanted in the first place. You know, we wanted the ham, and then we wanted the thread, and then we wanted the thread to make cloth, and now we have cloth." So he tells the second one, he says, "Just put down what we have and let's take the cloth and let's go on." And the first person, funnily, still very stubborn and attached, says, "I already carried this bundle of ham a long way. It's well tied up. It's good enough for me, you understand?" So one person takes the cloth, the other person continues carrying his raw ham. Guess what happens? So they keep on exploring the village, and then as they explore, they find in one place flax, and in another place linen thread, and then linen cloth, and then silk thread, silk cloth, iron, copper, tin, silver, and finally gold. So as they explore more and more, they find more and more valuable things. So their intention in being attracted by the ham was so that they can turn it into something that they can sell, something useful that they can sell, so they can get gold or silver. And as they kept on exploring the village, finally they found gold, which is, in terms of riches, that's what you want. That's the ultimate. So the first person says, "This pile of gold is just what we wanted all those other things for." Says, "Well then, my friend, let's abandon our bundles and both take a bundle of gold and go on." So this second man, who's probably a relative of Payasi, is still very stubborn, and he continues despite all this. Despite being able to see, he still carries his original bundle of raw ham. So whereas the other one, having exchanged his bundle for, in turn, finally let go of, I guess it was his silver, and then picked up a bundle of gold. So they returned to the village, and then when one friend returned with his original ham, he says he didn't please his parents, his partners, his children, his friends, or his colleagues, and he had no pleasure or happiness from his bundle of ham. But when the other returned with a bundle of gold, everyone, he had connections with, pleased, and so was him. So obviously, Melba Kachapa is telling Payasi that he's like the second, the first or second man, the man who stubbornly holds on to the original ham, and he says, "Let go, change." Don't create lasting harm and suffering for yourself. Okay, anyone wants to predict what Payasi says next? Okay, let's find out. Okay, so the title is called Going for Refuge, and Payasi says, I was delighted and satisfied with your very first simile, Master Kashyapa. Nevertheless, I wanted to hear your various solutions to the problem, so I thought I would oppose you in this way. Excellent, Master Kashyapa, excellent. As if he were writing the overturn, or revealing the hidden, or pointing out the path to the lost, or lighting a lamp in the dark so people with good eyes can see what's there. Master Kashyapa has made the teaching clear in many ways. Says I go for refuge to Master Gotama, to the teaching, and to the mendicant Sangha. So he goes for refuge to the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, which he refers to as Master Gotama, because the Buddha is Venerable Kashyapa's teacher. Says, from this day forth, may Master Kashyapa remember me as a lay follower who has gone for refuge for life. So actually, Payasi, in his cheekiness or whatever it is, was already convinced through the first simile from Venerable Kashyapa, but he just wanted to see what other reasons Venerable Kashyapa could give. So okay, so now he's not only is he fully convinced, but he actually admits that he's convinced, and he's expressed his gratitude. So how does he express his gratitude? So now he wants to make a sacrifice. He says, Master Kashyapa, I wish to perform a great sacrifice. Please instruct me so it will be for my lasting welfare and happiness. So having crossed the line into understanding cause and effect, he now wants to do something that he believes will bring him blessings. So remember, Kashyapa says, Chieftain, take the kind of sacrifice where cattle, goats and sheep, chicken and pigs, and various kinds of creatures are slaughtered, and the recipients have wrong view, wrong thought, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong immersion. What are all these wrongs? There's 8 wrongs here. These are the Noble Eightfold Path, the opposite of the Noble Eightfold Path. So that's why it's wrong. Change wrong to right, and you have the Noble Eightfold Path. So Rabbi Kashyapa says that kind of sacrifice is not very fruitful or beneficial or splendid or bountiful. Means, we should stay away. It's the wrong kind of thing. He explains, he says, suppose a farmer was to enter a wood, taking seed and plow, and on that barren field, that barren ground, with uncleared stumps, he sowed seeds that were broken, spoiled, weather damaged, infertile, and ill-kept. And the heavens don't provide enough rain when needed. Would those seeds grow, increase, and mature? And would the farmer get abundant fruit? So the reply comes, he said, no, Master Kashyapa. So Rabbi Kashyapa says, in the same way, chieftain, take the kind of sacrifice where cattle, goats and sheep, chicken and pigs, and various kinds of creatures are slaughtered, and the recipients have wrong view, wrong thought, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, wrong immersion. Wrong immersion means how you say, the concentration, wrong concentration. It says that kind of sacrifice is not very fruitful or beneficial or splendid or bountiful. So if you observe what Venerable Kashyapa is saying, there are 2 components. One is the actual sacrifice itself, and the other one is what's behind the sacrifice, the view, the intention, the how you behave as a person, which is the speech, the action, and the livelihood, and everything else. So it breaks up into 2 parts. So it says, but take the kind of sacrifice where cattle, goats, and sheep, chickens and pigs, and various kinds of creatures are not slaughtered. And the recipients have right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right immersion or right samadhi. Says that kind of sacrifice is very fruitful and beneficial and splendid and bountiful. And then he explains using the same simile He says, now a farmer plowing the land, but the land is fertile. There are no stumps with roots to interfere with the growing of the crops, and the seeds that are used are intact, unspoiled, and not damaged seeds. They are fertile, meaning they will definitely sprout, and they were kept properly, and there's enough rain. And it says, under these conditions, would the farmer get abundant fruit? And Payasi says yes. So Venerable Kashyapa says, in the same way, chieftain, if we don't sacrifice animals, okay, living beings are not slaughtered, and you understand what the Noble Eightfold Path is, which is, first we have the 5 precepts under right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And then you have right understanding or right view, and right thought or right intention behind the 5 precepts. And then you apply yourself well using right effort, right mindfulness, and right uh, immersion or right concentration, say in the Pure Land practice. Says that kind of sacrifice, he still calls it a sacrifice, or you can say an offering. He says that kind of sacrifice is very fruitful and beneficial and splendid and bountiful. So don't harm living beings, but don't perform the blessings or the sacrifice blindly. You need to understand what you're doing. So he says you need to have the 8 precepts behind it. Okay. So the result of this is then the chieftain Payasi set up an offering for ascetics and Brahmins, for paupers, vagrants, travelers, and beggars. At that offering, such food as rough gruel with pickles were given, and heavy clothes with knotted fringes. Now it was a Brahmin student named Uttara who organized that offering. So Payasi was you kind of like the sponsor, and he put Uttara, a Brahmin student, in charge of dispensing the offerings. And then when the offering was over, he referred to it like this. Who referred to it? Uttara, the student, the student who was responsible for putting everything together and making sure everyone who deserves something got it. What did he say? He said, through this offering, may I be together with the chieftain Payasi in this world, but not the next. Okay, meaning in the next world, he doesn't want to follow Payasi to wherever Payasi is going. In this world, is okay because Payasi is doing something good, but he doesn't want to share in Payasi's blessings for his future. Okay, which is a odd thing to say, right? So Payasi heard of this, and then he summoned Uttara. He called him and he said, "Is it really true, dear Uttara, that you refer to the offering in this way? That in this life you're okay being with me, but you don't want to be with me in our next life?" He says, "Don't we seek merit, expecting some result from the offering?" So Uttara replied. He says, "At your offering, such food as rough gruel with pickles were given, which you wouldn't even want to touch with your foot, much less eat. And also heavy clothes with knotted fringes, which you also wouldn't want to touch with your foot, much less wear. He says, Sir, you are dear and beloved to me, but how can I reconcile one so dear with something so as disagreeable?" So Payasi is telling, Uttara is telling Payasi, he says, the things that you're giving away are things that you would never eat or wear yourself. That's why. It means that all you want is just blessings, but you're not sincere. Your heart is not in the right place. You're only thinking about developing blessings for yourself. Never once do you think if um, what would the recipients actually want. So it's still kind of maybe selfish. Yeah. So when Payasi heard this, he said, "Oh, well then, dear Uttara, set up an offering with the same kind of food that I eat and the same kind of clothes that I wear." So he's convinced by Uttara's uh, I don't know, feedback. feedback, and he agrees to give the same food that he will eat and the same clothes that he would wear. So the chieftain Payasi gave gifts carelessly, thoughtlessly, not with his own hands, giving the dregs, meaning that he never, how you say, maybe he thought himself as the chieftain, he doesn't need to get involved, and so he did not give anything personally. He still let the student Uttara uh, manage all his offerings. So he says, when his body broke up, meaning Payasi, after death he was reborn in company with the gods of the four great kings, which is not bad, in the empty palace of Acacia. Whereas Acacia is a kind of wood. Um, uh, he says, but the Brahmin student Uttara, who organized the offering, gave gifts carefully, thoughtfully, with his own hands, not giving the dregs. When his body broke up, after death, he was reborn in company with the gods of the 33. Okay, so last week, Ru Chang had a question. She said she was confused with all the different heavens. So it is said that the heaven that's closest to Earth, I'm not sure if distance would be the right way to measure closest, maybe in terms of attainment of blessings to be reborn there. So it's the four great kings. That's the heaven that's closest to human beings. And then a superior heaven, the heaven above that, is the heaven of the 33, where the Lord Chakra or the Jade Emperor God uh, lives. So although Payasi had the idea of generating, of doing all these good deeds, and all the belongings belonged to him. It was his uh, money that sponsored all this giving. But because his heart was not as sincere as his student Uttara, and he did not give it personally, his reward was a lot less than his student. Yeah. That's why he's described as, his rebirth was described as in an empty palace of Acacia. So although he's in the heaven of the four great kings, but his palace is empty. Maybe his furniture is not so great, I guess, and his, maybe other people have palaces of precious jewels, but his is just wood. Okay, and how do we know this? Okay, this is very interesting. So now we introduce one of the monks during the Buddha's time, Venerable Gavampati. It is said that for his afternoon siestas, Venerable Gayampati, uh, Gavampati would always go to the heavens and sleep in the heavens because it's a lot more comfortable there. I'm not sure if I have it right, but that's my understanding of what people remember of Venerable Gavampati. I think he was already an arhat by the time, and because he had this ability, so why not take a nap in the most comfortable place you can find? So at this time, he says Venerable Gavampati would often go to the empty Akasha palace for the day's meditation. Okay, so he went there to meditate. Sorry, not a siesta. I guess if you were to see Venerable Gavampati just sitting there, you think he's sleeping, but actually he's meditating up in the heavens. So then the god Payasi went up to him, bowed, and stood to one side. Gavampati said to him, "Who are you, Reverend?" He says, "I am the chieftain Payasi." And he's so famous, Payasi, that even Venerable Gavampati knew about him. He says, "Didn't you have the view?" He said, "Aren't you the one who said that there's no afterlife? You don't believe that beings are reborn spontaneously, that there's no fruit of good, or no fruit or result of good and bad deeds, meaning you don't believe in karma?" And then Payasi replied, "It's true, sir, I did have such a view. But Venerable Kashyapa, the prince, dissuaded me from that harmful misconception." And then Venerable Gampati, who obviously knows what's going on, he says, "But the student named Uttara, who organized that offering for you, where has he been reborn?" So Payasi says, "Uttara gave gifts carefully, thoughtfully, with his own hands, not giving the dregs." Dregs meaning the lower quality items. When his body broke up after death, he was reborn in company with the gods of the 33. But I gave gifts carelessly, thoughtlessly, not with my own hands, giving the dregs. When my body broke up after death, I was reborn in company with the gods of the four great kings in an empty palace of Acacia. And why we know this? Remember when um, Payasi was trying to figure out if there was a heaven or there was a hell, and when people died or close to death, he would tell them, he said, promise me that if you go to hell or you go to heaven, you come back and tell me. Remember, that was one of Payasi's ways of finding out, of finding proof for his theory of no rebirth. Okay. Now, Payasi tells Venerable Gawampati, he said, so sir, when you return to the human realm, please announce. Say, give gifts carefully, thoughtfully, with your own hands, not giving the dregs. The chieftain Payasi gave gifts carelessly, thoughtlessly, not with his own hands, giving low quality items. When his body broke up after death, he was reborn in company with the gods of the four great kings in an empty palace of Acacia. But the Brahmin student Uttara, who organized the offering, gave gifts carefully, thoughtfully with his own hands, not giving the dregs. When his body broke up after death, he was reborn in company with the gods of the 33. So a long time ago, when in our series of classes and we talked about giving, we actually covered this last part about Payasi, the way Payasi gave and how Uttara gave. And it is not so much what you give, it is the sincerity and the thought and attention that you place in giving. And that makes all the difference. So Uttara giving away something that does not even belong to him, but he gave attentively, he gave it full care for the people. And because of that, his rewards were greater. Okay. All right, it's time, it's 10 o'clock. Let's look at Wrong's question. Question is, he says, in the previous lesson, I used the word volitional in conjunction with the principle of karma. Is a person volitional when they take action that is out of habit, or if the person is on auto drive? Okay, so volitional or intention is a very important word in Buddhism, because the Buddha says that he only classifies karma. Okay, he says only intentional actions or volitional actions the Buddha classifies as karma. However, that's a bit confusing, because then there's some people think that, oh, if I do something like Ron's question, if I do something out of habit and it's not intentional, I didn't mean to do it, I didn't have the intention of doing it, is it still considered karma? The problem with intention is that it happens very, very early in our thought process. So to give people a very quick background on how karma works, the seeds of karma that are planted in an egg consciousness arise based on the conditions that we are in, our surrounding conditions, and the sensory input that we get in through our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, which is how which is the measure of our reality, of our life. So every time, say, we see something, it activates a corresponding seed in our eight consciousness, which arises. At that point, say you see someone and it is someone you don't like. So when you see that person, the seed that arises from the eight consciousness, and it's not just one seed, it's multiple seeds, but it happens really quickly. So for simplicity, for discussion's sake, let's just call it one seed. So the seed arises, and immediately you feel a feeling of aversion or whatever it is connected to this person that you don't like. That is not intentional yet. Okay, at that point, it is not intentional. It is just a feeling that you have. But because the mind moves really, really, really quickly, we act based on that feeling. And when we act based on that feeling, although we are not aware of it, it's already intentional. So, which is why in some sutras they say that it I think it might be mentioned in the Earth Store Sutra. It says that, and I know in the Flower Dormant Sutra it mentions that, but I don't know exactly where, so I won't quote it. But in some Mahayana sutras, they say that every stirring of the mind of living beings is an offense. They go to that extent. It seems really, really harsh. But what it's saying is that every thought that we have, we can't help. We are driven by our past karma. And it's although we may not be conscious of our intention, but it would be classified as intentional. So we are creating karma based on that. We can't say, oh, I didn't know, or I didn't realize, and say that, oh, I didn't, so I'm free. I didn't create an offense or something like that. It doesn't really work that way because it's very subtle, which is why meditation is so important, because through meditation, you still the mind and you calm the mind down and you can see it happening. And when you see it happening, you catch it as early as you can and you don't follow after your emotions or your instinct. Uh, and you catch it as soon, if you can catch it as soon as the seed arises, then you are definitely in control of your fate. And this is why fortune telling works. If anyone here has any experience in astrology, or sometimes you see a fortune teller, or they read the lines on the palms of your hand, or in India they have something called the nadi leaves, where a few hundred years ago or 1,000 years ago, most people's fortunes were already written on palm leaves. And I know someone who actually, you give them your name, you travel to the village. Anyone who's interested, just be aware that there's a lot of scammers. But if you are fortunate enough, you know the people, and they take you to the authentic family or families who are keeping the leaves, what happens is they take your name, they translate your name into their language, and then someone will run off and get a set of leaves. And the person who's reading the leaves will ask you certain questions. And then from there, someone runs off again, and then they come back with another set of leaves and they ask you a few more questions. And then they come back with the set of leaves that the person will then tell you how many children you have, who you got married to, all your life in detail. And it's true. It's uh, they say that you will be amazed because they line up all the things that have happened to you and that will happen to you. So how can this work? Although the Buddha taught us about cause and effect so that we can be free of our past, is because it's really, really hard to catch ourselves when intention first forms. So in so Ron, you're right when you say that auto drive, most of us operate on auto drive. What helps us other than meditation in being able to transform our karma or purify our karma is the 5 precepts. If we can hold the 5 precepts well and we make vows and our intention is strong enough, the 5 precepts have the ability to transform our habits, although in a more gradual way. I guess that's depending on the person. For some people, it's gradual. So some people, it can be very sudden, depending on their karmic seeds that they have planted. So one way that we can be in control of our path is through 5 precepts, is through our vows, for example, and our practice. For example, the Pure Land practice. Using the Pure Land practice to gradually move away from the pleasures of the Saha world, because for some of us by now, we know that the Saha world pleasures are not real pleasures at all. And to move towards the Dharma, every opportunity that we have, all those are planting new habits that allow us to change our course. Then, yeah, I hope that's helpful. So when they say volitional or intentional action for cause and effect, the actual intention or volition happens very, very early on. By the time you are aware of your intention, it's already a bit late. It was formed a lot, in terms of thoughts coming up, it was formed multiple thoughts before. Yeah. But through reciting the Buddha's name, through meditation, through holding precepts, that's how we can get control of where we want to go instead of how you say, instead of being propelled by our past habits. All right. Okay, let's dedicate merit. Let me end this slideshow. Do we have any further questions? Okay, so we are at Tân Pian, and I believe at CDTB right now, we're having the Earth Store session where we're reciting the Earth Store Sutra in CDTB. They have the English version. In Malaysia, they're reciting the Chinese version. They're all being shared on Zoom and maybe YouTube. Yeah. Okay, let's dedicate merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's do a bows. Okay, 3 bows to the Buddha. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. So Melinda says that a lot of people in the world like Payasi, they have not met Master Kashyapa yet. Well, we have. So let's practice and let's bring, when we become Bodhisattvas, we can bring Venerable Kashyapa words to all of them. Okay, so we'll see everyone next week. Okay, bye-bye. Amitabha.
Thank you, Amitabha.
Amitabha, everyone. Bye-bye.